So this whole session is going to be recorded for viewing later. So if you're here, you can go back and rewatch this whole thing if you'd like. And if you have some colleagues or some other teachers that you know that weren't able to come today or whatever, you can share this. We'll be able to share this video with them. I'll share the link with everybody here for where to find this video afterwards, so you can watch through this stuff later. As I said before, I just have everybody's microphones muted as they come in. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask away. You just have to hit the unmute button. On my screen, it'll be up on the top. I believe when it's on your guys' screen, it'll be at the bottom of the screen. Either way, just find the little microphone icon and just make sure it doesn't have the little red line through it. As long as it doesn't, I'll be able to hear you. Or you can type in the chat. I'll open up my chat again here, just in case. There we go. And if you have any questions, feel free to shout out. You don't have to wait or anything. Just feel free to shout out. I can be in the middle of a sentence and feel free to interrupt me. That's totally fine. All right, so with that being said, let's go ahead and, I'll take off my stuff here and I'll turn my webcam on to show my beautiful face. All right. So let's go ahead and kind of get into it here. I'm going to hide that thing. There we go. So of course, today's session is all about everything that you need to know about Google Classroom. Oh, I think I have one more person that needed to get in. So hang on one second. Let me shoot them an email.
Should we be able to see you right now?
I just turned on my webcam. It should have turned on. If you're looking at my shared screen, it might have. I paused it just for a second to send people the links to the session today.
Yeah, because I've got the original screen and then the. Oh, wait a minute. If I arrow over, I'll be able to see you, right? Okay, I see now.
All right, so with that being all situated here, let's go ahead and get rolling now. So, like I mentioned, if you don't have the slideshow for today, if you type in this bit.ly short link, bit.ly/class325, that will get you the whole slideshow for today. I'll introduce myself real quick. So my name's Dan. I'm a technology integration specialist. That means I do teacher technology PD. Normally I do these things in person. Occasionally I'll do webinar things, but if under these circumstances, of course, we kind of have to do them in a webinar here. If you have any questions after today, something you kind of didn't think of during our session, here's my email on slide number 2. So if you have any questions, that's the best way to get a hold of me. Shoot me an email and I'll go ahead and answer any questions for you. If you are seeking graduate credit, we have a thing with Ashland University to offer graduate credit for coming to these teacher technology training, technology integration sessions. Here on slide number 3 are some links for you. The first one here is if you are seeking graduate credit, it'll take you over to this page. This one has all the step-by-step instructions for how you can earn graduate credit. Basically, you have 2 ways to earn graduate credit. You can come to 5 hours of training with me. Today's is 2.5, so you're halfway there just by coming to today's. And completing a job embedded log. You're basically just keeping track of the different ways that you've integrated the things that you've learned today into your daily practices. You just keep a log. It's pretty easy to use. Or the other option is you can come to 12.5 hours of training with me and do a little lesson plan assignment. This other link down here will take you over to some more details about that and what the assignments look like, that kind of stuff. Okay. Let me shoot one more email. I just got an email from somebody, so hang on one second. I'm gonna shoot over another email. Ba-boom. And boom. Okay, cool. So to start out our session here, I'm going to do a little pre-quiz, post-quiz with you guys. And this is I have a little, I think it's 12 or 13 questions about Google Classroom. So we're going to do a little pre-quiz and a post-quiz. And on your guys' screen, go ahead and open up a new tab. And what you guys are going to do is, let me get this quiz set up here. And what you guys are going to do is you'll head over to this website. Hang on one second. You guys are going to go over to this website right here. So open up a new tab in your browser. Don't close down anything else. Just open up a new one and go to type in this address here. So joinmyquiz.com.
Can I do? Is it Command T to open up a new?
Yeah, yeah. If you want to be fancy and do the keyboard shortcut, that's what it is for sure.
Okay. Okay, got it.
Joinmyquiz.com, and then
I'm on my iPad.
if you're on an iPad, you can still go into the browser, and you'll go into you can create a new tab in the browser as well, and just switch to another tab.
Oh.
All right, we're seeing a good amount of people getting finished up here. So the cool thing about this tool here, about quizzes, we are able to see the common like pain points or common questions that people have missed, which is pretty cool. So if you're finished with the quiz, you can jump back over to the Zoom window and you'll be able to see my screen again. And the cool thing is we can take a look at the commonly missed questions here. So we had about half people miss this question, so which is not automatically created when you make a Google Classroom. We'll also see things like this one. So a lot of people miss this one. Which 2 ways can you access Google Classroom? The number 5 was another one that people missed about half of. About half our people missed. So students need to get permission from the teacher to be able to resubmit work. We'll talk about that as well. What does the plus button do? We'll definitely look at that as well. And we'll take a look at basically all this stuff, of course, as we're going through today. But let's go ahead. I'll go ahead and just end the game for the sake of time here, and we'll get our little winner section. And the cool thing is it's very kitschy, it's very fun. It's kind of like again, if you've used Kahoot in the past. So congrats to Jen B for taking home the gold right now. So good job, Jen. And I'll see all our 100%ers. So nice job, guys. So of course we'll come back to this the same game at the end today. But for our purposes, let's go ahead and dive back into the slideshow here. So like I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of stuff in Google Classroom that we need to know, and we're basically just going to take it right from the beginning here. And here's our agenda for today. So we'll start out by looking at how to set up your Google Classroom in the first place, how to create the classrooms, and then how to fill them in with your teachers, with your co-teachers and students. Then we'll look at how to add and communicate with parents. Then we'll also look at how Google Classroom works with Google Drive. As I'm sure you guys know, the Google stuff is very good at talking to each other. There's no exception here. And then we'll, of course, go into posting and grading assignments. That's really the whole point of Google Classroom, right? Is to be able to go through and post and grade assignments for your students. So we'll definitely take a look at that as well. All right. So, and one last thing, if you are a Progress Book gradebook user, there's an integration there between Google Classroom and Progress Books. We'll look at that at the end today too. All right. Here on slide number 6, there is a big playlist of videos from Google. Again, slide number 6, when you click on that link, it takes you over to this page. There's a ton of good stuff in here. Each one of these videos basically breaks down all the major things that you need to know to be able to use Google Classroom. For our purposes in this session here, I'm not going to play all these videos for us. You can, of course, refer back to these whenever you'd like. But there's a link for it. There you go on slide number 6. Oh, that reminds me. One thing I forgot to mention, somebody brought up this question earlier. Are we going to be able to have this slideshow later after our session today? The answer is yes. As soon as you put in that short link, if you have this slideshow on your own browser, as long as you're signed into your Chrome browser or you're signed into your Google account, this is going to show up in your shared with me folder in your Google Drive. So if you're not familiar with that, when you're in your Google Drive, you go over to this button here over on the left-hand side that says shared with me. It'll show up in there. As long as you're signed in with the same Google account there, your
Hey,
school.
Dan,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I can't get back to the original screen. I got you minimized in a tiny little box here. How do I get you back?
I believe you hover over it and then you're able to maximize it.
Yeah, in theory, that's true.
In
Okay.
theory.
So I hit escape while I was hovering over it. Okay, that worked. Gotcha.
Okay, cool.
All right. Sorry.
No problem. Yeah, and like I said, so you'll have that in your shared with me folder, so you can refer back to it whenever you'd like. All right, so let's go ahead and get started and talking about how we get into our Google Classrooms and how we get them all set up. So there's two ways, if you remember from the little quiz that we had there, to get into Google Classroom. One is this way by just typing in this link, classroom.google.com. In the Google world, all of the apps are to get to them, it's the name of the app.classroom.com. So for example, it's classroom.google.com. If you wanted to go and create a Google Doc, you put in docs.google.com. If you wanted to make a Google form, you type in forms.google.com, and so on and so on. All right, so that's one way. The other way is when you are in a brand new tab, you'll see the waffle, if you guys are familiar with a waffle. So when you're in a brand new Google tab, you'll see the little waffle icon up in the very top right next to your profile picture. When you click on that, this opens up your app drawer here. And then somewhere in there will be Google Classroom.
Why can't I not see any?
And let me post that to everybody here. Let me type back in the chat if you didn't get the, oh, thank you, Jennifer, for typing that in. Awesome, you saved me a step there. It is a capital C though, in the bit.ly address, capital C. So bit.ly/C class 325. All right. So once you click on Google Classroom, then you'll be taken right in. Now I have a bunch of classrooms already in here. So I have a bunch of these boxes that are sitting in here. But for you guys, if you've never used Google Classroom before, it'll just be blank in here. It'll just kind of mostly a plain white screen. But the whole point of this page here is it's your home page. All right. So again, let me show that one more time. So when you open up a new tab, if you're in Chrome, if you have Google, if you're using Google Chrome, this will be your default new tab page, and you can come up to the waffle up here. The same waffle will show up if you're in your Google Drive as well, same place. Either way, when you click on your waffle, you'll be taken into, or the app drawer will pop up here, and somewhere in the app drawer, Google Classroom will be found, so you just give that a click. Or you can just type into your address bar classroom.google.com. Okay, and so once you're in here, you will see all of your classes as kind of look like a deck of cards. And I have a bunch of them already because I do a bunch of demos and everything with Google Classroom. But if it's your very first time in here, you're not going to see any of these cards in here. It'll just pretty much be mostly a blank screen. I think there's like a little message in the middle. But if you are ready to make your own class, we'll come up to the very top right corner and we'll look for this little plus button up here. The plus button way up in the top right corner. And when you first click it, it'll say join class or create class. Now, if this is your very, very first time, this part's super important. If this is your very, very first time into Google Classroom, you'll have to click on create a class. Okay. The reason is if you click join class, it's going to assume that you're a student, and then in the future, you won't be able to create a class. All right. Then your Google administrator will have to fix that for you. All right. So when you're up in the top right corner, click on that plus, and then we'll do create class. And then this box is going to come up. This is just asking you to put in the name of your class. So maybe I'll type in, March 25 demo class. Okay. Of course, you can name your class whatever you want. You can rename it later if you'd like to. The other three boxes here, you don't have to put anything in. You can if you want to. You can put a section number, a subject, and or a room. You only have to put something in that very first row. And then go ahead and click on Create. We'll take a few seconds, and then it's going to open up your brand new class. So this is essentially now an empty classroom. As soon as you click that Create button, the reason it takes a few seconds for it to create the class is it's doing a couple of different things when you first create a class. This goes back to one of those questions in our little pre-quiz. One thing it does is it creates a folder automatically in your Google Drive. So back over in my Google Drive here, it's gonna, every time you make a Google Classroom, it's adding a new folder into your Google Drive. Now, the first time that you make a Google Classroom, it's gonna automatically create a folder in your Google Drive called Classroom. When you click on it, go into that folder, you'll see a folder for each one of your different classrooms. This is kind of like a filing cabinet. That's kind of the whole point. And so inside of this classroom folder in your Google Drive, you're going to see all of your different folders from all your different classes. I have a bunch of them because I've done a lot of demos for Google Classroom. If this is your first time using Google Classroom, you're not going to see much in here. Ooh, that's a good question. So somebody asked, will this happen if you are added to the class as a co-teacher? I believe so, yes. It'll be created in the same way. It'll be found in the same place. So co-teachers are teachers that are not the ones that have originally created the class. Usually we're talking, when we have co-teachers, those are usually maybe like a student teacher or like a special ed teacher or things like that, where they're not the main teacher, but they're kind of helping out the main teacher. Okay, so inside your Google Classroom folder in your Drive here, we'll see there's my new folder that I just created. If I go inside of that, it's going to be empty because we haven't put anything in this filing cabinet yet. But as we play around today, we're going to see this folder quickly fill up with stuff.
Dan,
Go ahead.
this is Gregory again. I apologize, but I simply can't get back in and maximize it again, and I don't know why. I've tried everything I can think of. It won't let me. It won't hover or anything else or try to. It just keeps you in a small little box.
Keeps me in a small little box.
Yep.
Double click on top of me, maybe. Was anybody else having this issue here?
I had to go back and open my email and then click the link again, and it came right up. That
would work.
Okay, let me try that because the only thing I haven't done. Everything else is not working.
Okay. All right, and then so once you're in your Google Classroom here, that's one thing that's created. It creates a folder for you in your Google Drive. And like I said, it's going to automatically put any of that stuff that you save that you save or that you post in your Google Classroom or that students turn into you. All that stuff is going to be saved in your Google Drive in that virtual filing cabinet. So the other thing that Google Classroom automatically does as soon as you make a new Google Classroom is it adds that to your Google Calendar. So let me jump off to a new tab again here. And I'm going to go into my Google Calendar, go into the waffle, and then into Google Calendar. And what we'll see is I have a bunch of calendars down here, but let me minimize that one. You'll see here's my brand new March 25th demo class calendar. And again, this is just something that's automatically created. As we start posting assignments and giving assignments due dates and that sort of thing, we're going to start seeing those things show up on this calendar automatically as well, which is really cool because it helps you keep track of things. Okay, so those are the two main things that the Classroom creates automatically when you first create a brand new classroom. So let's go ahead and dive in to how to really get started with filling in filling in our classrooms with people and content here. Back on the slideshow here on slide number 8, there is a video for you. We're not going to watch it together right now, but of course you can watch it at your leisure here. It's one of those videos that's also on that big page. Somebody asked a question, what does what you post in our classroom get saved in the file folder automatically? My folder does not have anything posted in my classroom saved there. Yes, so everything that you post in your Google Classroom is going to be saved into that folder. So whether it's something that, you know, it's like a handout that you have created, or it's things that students have turned in, both things are going to be saved in that folder. Okay. All right, so again, this video on slide number 8 is kind of at your leisure to watch for how to get started here, but we'll take a dive into all the important stuff. And somebody also asked, is the reverse true? Can you add to the folder and have it in the classroom? Sort of. We'll take a look. We'll take a look at how you're going to be posting things and what files and folders you can grab stuff from. I have not shared the classroom with my students yet, so is that why nothing would be in my folder at this point? Yes, yeah. If you haven't posted anything, if you haven't had any students in your classroom submitting anything yet, you're not gonna have anything in the folder yet. Okay, so let's go ahead and dive into the important buttons here in Google Classroom. So back on the slideshow here, on slide number 9, we have the basic buttons here. So the first one is called the stream. This is where you're going to have your classroom notifications, any announcements, also conversations. It's really more like almost kind of like a discussion board. And the cool thing is you can control how that works in your class. We'll take a look at that, those settings and everything here in just a second. The Classwork tab is where you'll spend most of your time. It's how you're going to post assignments. It's how you're going to organize your assignments into different topics. You can post individual questions. It's how you're going to do your grading, all that fun stuff. In the People tab is where you're going to find all of your teachers, all your co-teachers, and all of your students, and you're able to take a look at student permissions, whether or not to mute them. We'll talk about what that means in just a second. And then in the home page, this is where all your courses live. That was that first page that we went into where we clicked that plus button to create the class. We'll revisit that page again in a little bit. And then settings is where we can edit everything about the class, meaning the class's name or the class join code, and our different settings for the class. Okay, so now what we'll do is we'll take a pretty good dive into each one of these things here. So our first one is the stream. So in Google Classroom, when you first come into a class, you land on the stream page. And the stream, the way I like to describe it is it's kind of like a Facebook feed. That's kind of what it's like. And so it's really just for communication or like discussion purposes. And you as the teacher can decide how you're going to use it. Is it just going to be purely for announcements for students, or do you want it to behave more like a discussion board? All right, so when we first come in here, when we first create the class, there's not going to be anything in here yet. It gives you a couple of like tips and everything, so you can, here it says communicate with your students, where you can create and schedule announcements, and you can respond to students' posts. If you want to create a post, you just click on that part there that says to create a post, and then you can put in all of your announcements or topics for discussion. If you click on this first dropdown, you can choose to post it to multiple classrooms at once. The nice thing about that is if you have multiple sections of the same class, so you don't have to post the same thing 2 or 3 or 4 times over. You can just post it once and post it to all of those students. The second dropdown over here lets you pick which students are going to see that announcement. So if you are having different announcements for different students or different discussions for different students, you can kind of split it up that way. And then you can type in your message in here. Maybe I'll just have like a welcome message in there. And then below that, we can also add any sort of links or files or videos that we want that goes along with our message. Okay, so if you want to post this right now, we can hit that post button. Any students that are in the class will see that post, will see that topic. If you want it to show up later, we can click on the drop down next to the word post, and then we'll have this option for schedule or save as a draft. If we click schedule, we can have this automatically open at a certain time. So if I just want to kind of prep some stuff ahead of time, and maybe I don't want this to actually show up until Monday at 8 a.m., I can click on schedule, and then it'll show up at that time. Okay, so for students, it's not going to show up until then. All right. If you want to save it as a draft, that means nobody's able to see it except for you. And so if you're just kind of working on something, you can just kind of have it there set up. And then once you're ready, you can post it. Okay. So that's pretty much what we have in the stream page. Now you'll notice that we have this big old banner up here at the top, and it gives you like a random background picture. But you'll also notice right below the name of your class, you're going to see this class code. So when you click on the little square next to the class code, it displays the class code bigger. And you can make it even bigger by clicking on the square below that. And that's going to make it nice and huge and full screen for us here. Somebody asked a question, if we save it as a draft, where's the draft saved? It's saved right there inside of our stream page. It just kind of hides it up here at the top. And then you can open it up or delete it from there. So it's saved right on the same page. Right. And so for this join code, again, the whole purpose of this join code is to get students into the class. Okay. So just like a few minutes ago, how I had you guys join that quiz for me, it's kind of the same idea. What students will do is they will join the class, they'll go to Google Classroom, either by classroom.google.com or into their waffle and find Google Classroom, and then they'll type in this join code and they'll be in. Now, I'll show you guys what that looks like from the student side real quick. So just to show you how easy it is. So here's the join code. I'm showing as the teacher here, I'm saying, okay, kids, here's this join code, and go ahead into your Google Classrooms, click the plus, and then join the class. So this is what students will do. And so here I have a student account here. And here comes my student. He's going to jump into the class. He'll go into his Google Classroom. And it loads up for me. And he's already a part of all these different classes already. But if I need him to join my class, I can click this plus button up here. Again, this is what the student's going to do. He'll click on that plus button up at the top, and he'll type in or paste that code in and click on join. And so once he joins into the class, here he is. This is as the student, we're seeing what he's able to do. Somebody asked a question, do you have to send that to the student when you invite them to the class? Yes, that's one of the ways to get students in. That's probably the easier way to get them in, is to send them the join code, and then they're able to join into the class. Now this works really good for probably your upper elementary and on students. Your younger kids may have trouble doing it depending on their tech skills. So they may need a parent help to do that, working from home. But there's another way to do it where you can add them directly as well. Somebody has a good question. Yeah, for younger kids, we're going to be able to direct add them as well. And I'll show you guys that in just a second too. Okay, so once, again, you guys are looking at the student side here, and the student will just come in and now he's part of the class. He doesn't have to ever use the join code again, unless for some reason he gets kicked out of the class. But here he is in the class. Now if I come over to the homepage here, here he is. Here's all of his other classes that he's a part of. And here's this demo class that he just joined. Okay. All right. Another question. Let's see. Will you ever how to create the join code? So the join code is automatically created. It's going to be found below the banner, below your the name of your class up here at the top. It's going to be automatically created. It's going to be found right here. And you just click on that little square, and it's going to display it. So you can copy this and message it out to your students and however you communicate with them. And you can just give them directions here. Go type in classroom.google.com, and then click that plus button at the top right, and then type in this code, and you'll be in the class. That's all they need. Okay. All right. So that's pretty much all we need to know right now for the stream. Okay. Now back on the slideshow, that's one crossed off the list here. Our next one is our Classwork tab. All right. So with our Classwork tab, again, this is kind of like I mentioned, where you'll probably spend most of your time, because this is where you're going to be posting assignments. This is where you're going to go to start grading things, etc. So in our Classwork tab, we'll also see a couple of short links in the upper right to get right to your Google Calendar and right to your Google Drive folder for this class. So those are just a couple of nice little short links to get right to those things if you need to get there. But anyway, the main thing to know is this Create button right here. In the upper left, we have this Create button. When we click on it, there's a bunch of different options in here. So let me break down these options real quick. Back on the slideshow let me skip ahead here. There we go. Back on the slideshow on slide number 13. So you have to jump ahead a little bit if you're following along, but you don't have to. So on the slideshow on slide 13 here, we have a breakdown of what all those different buttons do. All right. So again, when you click on that Create button, you have a bunch of different options. So here's the differences. So the first one is called assignment. This is probably the most common thing you'll use. These are assignments. Go figure. There is you have the option to make assignments worth points. You can attach in files. You can also set due dates. Under the next one, we have quiz assignment. It's the same general idea as the regular assignment, but what it does is it's going to quickly add a blank Google form quiz that's set to auto-grade that students will be, with the grades that'll be imported right into the Google Classroom gradebook. So if you are a Google Forms quiz user, it essentially just makes a quick blank one for you, so you don't have to change all those settings like you would if you're making a Google form quiz. Next, we have a question. This is where you're able to ask an individual question with short answer or multiple choice that students can answer right inside of Classroom. They don't have to go off to another website or anything. They can just answer it right inside of Classroom. So it's really good just for asking one simple, kind of easy question. Next one is material. This is, for lack of a better term, it's a handout. These are things that you're going to share with students, whether it's a file or a link or a video, something that's not worth points, but it's just a handout for students to see. So it may be like a syllabus, or it might be, directions for class rules or things like that. And then below that, we have reuse post, which means we can copy any post from our other Google Classrooms. Now, this is really nice, again, if you're teaching the same thing in multiple Google Classrooms, or if you're a Google Classroom user that's been using Google Classroom for a while, you can go back and borrow posts from your other classrooms without having to create the whole thing from scratch all over again. So that can save you a lot of time. And then finally, our last one here is topics. And these are ways to organize and split up the Classwork tab into different sections. We can move posts around. It's really just a way to keep things organized as, over time you'll have your Google Classroom really filled out with a lot of assignments. So you'll have to make it clear which assignments are important for students to do or where to look to find the right assignment. Okay, so back in our Google Classroom here, I'm going to go ahead and I'll run you guys through the whole process of how to create an assignment, what it looks like for a student to go and do the assignment, and then how they turn it in, and then we'll look at how to grade it and return it to the student as well. I got another email from somebody, so hang on 1 second. I need to make sure we have everybody. Make sure everybody has the link. There we go. Okay. All right, so let's go ahead and run through that whole process here for creating an assignment. All right, so here we are in our Classwork tab. Again, this is probably where you're spending most of your time. In the Classwork tab, we'll go to the Create button, and we'll choose one of the types of assignments to create. Again, the most common one you'll do is assignment. That's why it's at the top there. And it'll pop up this little window for us here, and we're going to fill in all of our details. So in the very first line, we have title. So we'll just put in the title of the assignment. So maybe I'll just call it Worksheet number 1. Okay. In our instructions box, the one below that, we can put in any of our instructions. We don't have to put anything in here. As a good rule of thumb, I like to say to remind students to press the submit button. You'll see what I mean by that in a little bit, but as a good rule of thumb, I like to say that in the instructions. Press the submit button. Okay. Now, below that, we can pull in our attachments. So any like handouts that you would give to your students. So we have two options. We have add or create. If we have something already set up, we can go into the add button here and we can grab something from our Google Drive. We can pull in a link from any other website we want to share with our students. We can also upload a file that's sitting on our computer. And we can also pull something from YouTube as well. Now, one thing I would recommend is if you are sharing a file with your students, like it's a handout, what I would do is do the Google Drive. The reason for that is we're going to have the ability to, we'll have a couple of little extra abilities that make it really, really useful. So the point is, if you have some stuff saved on your computer locally, like it's on your desktop, but not in your Google Drive, put that stuff in your Google Drive. With your school's accounts, you get unlimited storage in Google Drive. So go ahead and save all that stuff in your Google Drive, just so you don't have to worry about losing those little extra bonuses that you get. Okay, so the point is, if you are sharing a file with your students, whether it's like a handout worksheet, whether it's like a quiz or whatever it is, what I would recommend, the best one to do is Google Drive. All right. If you need them to go visit a certain web page, give them the exact link to go to. Don't just tell them, to generally find the page that you're talking about, because they may not find the right one. Okay. So give them the exact link. In the YouTube section, if you want to include a video here, when you click on that, you have a little search, and you can just search for whatever you like. So if I search for, a crash course video here, I always like these crash course videos. We can go ahead and double click that and drop that right in. Okay. If you have YouTube open on another tab here, and let me just open up a video here. We can just copy the link from up here, from up in the address bar, and we can drop it into YouTube by the URL or the web address, and there it is. Okay, so we can do it either way. So if you have the exact link already set up, you can paste it in the URL section, or you can just search for it. Okay, now the cool thing is you can add multiple attachments in here into your assignments. So I have a video here. Maybe I want to have a video and a worksheet that goes along with it. So what I'll do is, let's say I don't have the worksheet made yet, so I still need to create it. So I can come over here to the create button, and I can choose any of these types of files here. And I just want to do a simple worksheet, so I'm just going to go do a Google Doc. And when I click on that Google Doc button, it's going to create a brand new one for me. And here's just a blank Google Doc, and we'll start to create our worksheet. And I'll put in the title up in the top left. So worksheet number 1. And then we'll start, typing in our questions. So, question 1, question 2, question 3, blah, blah, blah. We fill in all of our questions as normal. Okay. Now, here's one thing that I highly recommend. If you are giving students a digital worksheet to work on, you need to make it really, really clear where they're supposed to respond. Okay. The reason for that is, if you don't, students are going to be typing all over the place, and it's going to mess up your format. It's going to push stuff down the page, or students are going to be typing like in the middle of sentences. I don't know why they do it, but they do it. So we need to make a real clear, easy spot for students to respond. And this is a really good way to do this. So check this out. Put your cursor wherever you want students to respond. And what we'll do is we'll just put a little 1-by-1 table in that spot. All right. So what I'll do is come up to the Insert tab, and I'll hover over Table, and I do a 1-by-1 table. So here it drops in this little box for me. And the cool thing is, if students, write, I'm just going to slap the keyboard here, but if students write a bunch of stuff and they keep typing more and more, notice the box gets bigger as they're typing. So this is really nice because it's not going to mess up your formatting for other things. Okay. The other thing you can do, if you want to go even further, this is especially good for younger kids, making it really clear for where they're supposed to respond, is you can change the color of your boxes here. So if I want to change the color here, make sure I'm clicked inside, make sure my cursor is blinking here inside of my box. And we want to find the fill bucket. On my screen here, it's kind of it's kind of squished in here, so it's going to be under this little more menu. Depending on how big your screen is, it may or may not be under the more menu, but we need to look for this little fill bucket here, and we can change the color. So maybe if I make it yellow here. And then in our directions at the top of the page, we can say, directions, answer the questions in the yellow boxes. Okay, that way students have a real clear spot for where they're supposed to respond. Okay, and that's gonna be a lot easier on them, and it's gonna be a lot easier on you as you're grading these things, because if you're grading 50 or 100 of these things, it's gonna be a lot easier if you're looking in the same spot every time. Okay, all right, so here is the worksheet. Let's just pretend it's all filled out and ready to go. So I'll close out of these. Oop, there we go. And so here it is. I might have to give it a refresh here. But as soon as that assignment is that Google Doc is created, we'll see this little drop-down button that shows up over here on the side. And we have the option to make a copy for each student. So what that means is, if you're familiar with how sharing works in the Google world here, when you share a document with somebody, that means that anybody or lots of other people, anybody's that have access to the document can be sharing on the same paper at the same time. Now that's nice if that's what you're trying to do, but if you're trying to have students work on something independently, that's not going to be very helpful because we need to have students working on their own worksheets independently. Okay, so what selecting make a copy for each student does is it allows students to have their own version that's not going to mess up anybody else's. Okay, and the cool thing about this is, as soon as you select make a copy for each student, what it's going to do, as soon as a student clicks on this assignment and goes into that worksheet, it's automatically going to put their name at the top in the title of the document. And when they turn it in, again, you're going to only see their version. You're not going to see anybody else's. Okay, so just that individual students. Okay, of course, there's lots of more files that you can put in here. You can make essentially anything that you need to share, you can share. Let's see, we have a question here. When you add an assignment from, say, your thumb drive, how do we get where the students can directly answer questions onto that was already made? Does it make sense what I'm saying? I believe so. So if you have something like on a flash drive or on a thumb drive, again, what I would do is I would back up all that stuff into your Google Drive. That way you are able to do this. The main thing is making a copy for each student. That's probably the most useful thing about Google Classroom, is the ability to make a copy for each student. If you are attaching a file directly from your thumb drive or your desktop, I don't believe you have the ability to make a copy for each student. Okay, so what I would do is back up that stuff into your Google Drive first, and then pull it from your Google Drive into Google Classroom here. Okay, anything that you save in here in your Google Drive will be put in here. Awesome. All right. Okay, all right, so then there's our assignment. So we have the name of the assignment made, we have some directions, we have a video and a worksheet. Perfect. So over here on the right-hand side now, we'll set up kind of all the logistics for it. So up here in the very first drop-down box, we have the ability to choose to put this assignment in multiple classrooms if we'd like. Again, just like I kind of talked about before, if you're teaching the same class just to different groups of students, you can post this in multiple classrooms at once, which is awesome. You can also select individual students to send this to. That's very good for doing some individualization or differentiation, or for your students have an IEP that you have to accommodate for. That's really good. So on that accommodation point, if you have students that say only are their IEP says they only have to answer half as many questions, something like that. What you can do is make a quote unquote regular version for most of the kids. And then you can make a adapted or accommodated version for that individual or a couple of students that have that accommodation. Okay, and then you just select those students that need to receive that version. None of the students are going to know the difference. Students will only see the assignments that are assigned to them. All right, I think we had another question here. Let me see. Can I add one of those yellow text boxes for kids to write on a PDF? Yes, you're going to have to use an outside tool, though. There's a good outside tool called Kami, K-A-M-I, that you can use. There's a little bit of setup with that. What I would recommend is find a way to put that, to get that same questions into a Google Doc. That's probably going to be the easier thing to do, kind of depending on what it is. That's a good question, though. All right, and then below that we have our point values. So you can set this for as many points as you'd like. If you click the little drop down, you can also make it ungraded if you like. So if it's not actually worth any points, you can just make it ungraded, or you can make it worth as many points as you like. So I'll make it worth 10 points. And then below that, we'll have our due dates, and we can set a due date and time. So if I'd like to make this, due, I'll make it due on Monday at 3 p.m. There it is. Now, how the due dates work here, let me explain this. When you set a due date on here, if a student does not turn anything in by this due date, they will be flagged as missing in your Google Classroom gradebook. You'll see what I mean in a minute here. And if a student turns it in after the due date, it'll be flagged as late in your gradebook. Okay, so you'll be able to see it either way, and of course it's up to you if you want to dock points off or not. Okay, and then below that we have our topic button here, and again the topic is a way for you to organize your Google Classroom into different sections. We'll play around with topics more in a little bit. And then below that, we have our rubrics. All right. So what rubrics do is they let you create a rubric right inside of Google Classroom here, and so that can help you out with grading. Now, this is a pretty new thing that Google Classroom has done. It's only been out for a couple of months, if that. But when you click on it, you can create a brand new rubric. You can reuse a rubric, or you can import one from a Google Sheet. The one we'll focus on right now is create a rubric. And when you first come in here, it lets you basically create as many criteria as you'd like, and basically customize all that fun stuff. So here's our rubric for this assignment here. You don't have to use the rubric if you just want to grade it manually. That's totally fine. This is something that's kind of extra. It's kind of something that a lot of teachers out there wanted to see in Google Classroom, and Google did it, which is pretty cool. So let's go ahead and dive in here. So when we first come into the main part of the page, we're going to see a criterion title box. So maybe we'll do like grammar and spelling. Grammar and spelling, so that's our criteria. And then below that, we can put in a description. Grammar and spelling seems pretty sounds pretty self-explanatory. And then we can choose whether or not the scale is going to be ascending or descending. Ascending means on the left-hand side is your lowest amount, is your lowest points possible. On the right side, it'll be your highest points possible, and then descending is your opposite. For some reason, I like to do ascending, so my brain works better that way. So let's say for 0 points here, level title is maybe poor. I say 5 plus mistakes, and you'll notice these little plus buttons on either side, so you can go to make another point value on either side. So that one's worth 0 points. Next one's worth 1 point. Maybe I'll say okay, and maybe that's 3 to 4 mistakes. And the next one's 2 points. That one's good, and that one is 1 to 2 mistakes. And then for three points is excellent, and that one's 0 mistakes. Okay, so there's one of our criteria there. If I want to create another one, down below that, I can click on Add Criterion, and then I can make a whole nother list of criteria here. For our purposes, I'll just do the one here. So I'll just delete that one there. Okay, so there's our criteria. We have a nice little easy rubric for this class, and the cool thing, or for this assignment rather, and the cool thing is whatever point values that you put into your rubric here is going to show up for the assignment. So if you create a rubric, that effectively overwrites what you have here under the original point value. Okay, so if you intend on creating a rubric, you don't really have to worry about this box. You can just create the rubric, and the rubric will basically just overwrite whatever we had in the original point value. Okay, again, you don't have to use a rubric. This is something that's kind of extra. It's a new thing, but it's very handy to have. All right, and then below that we have Originality Reports. This is also a new thing that's relatively new. What this does is it essentially checks for plagiarism. Now, this is something that I believe just came out of beta from Google, and essentially the way it works is a couple of times you have a couple of these uses per year, and it essentially gives you an automatic plagiarism check, but you can only use it a certain number of times. All right, and then somebody asked in the chat, do the rubrics auto-grade? No. You will just look at the rubric basically while you are grading the student's work, and you can just check off which section or which how many point values they get, and then that value will be put in. You'll see what I mean in just a little bit. All right, so here's our assignment. It's totally created. So to sum up here, we put in the name of the assignment. We put in the instructions. Do we have somebody ask a question? Nope. Okay. We put in our instructions here, and then below that we put in all of our attachments, whether it's a video or a worksheet to work on, whatever it is. It's all attached to the assignment. Then over here on the right-hand side, we choose all of our logistics. So we can choose which classroom it goes to, which students it goes to, how many points it's worth, when the due date is, what topic to put it under, and also if you want to create a rubric. Cool. So it's all done. Time to post it for the students to see. So up in the very top right corner, we'll see the Assign button. If you want to assign it right now for your students to see instantly, we can click on Assign. Or if you click on the drop down next to it, you can choose to schedule it or save it as a draft. And if that sounds familiar, it should, because we talked about that when we were in the stream earlier, talking about posting announcements. If you would like to have this open up at certain times for your students, so let's say I want my students to get this tomorrow morning, so they'll get it on March 27th at 8 a.m. That sounds, or 26, there we go, 26 at 8 a.m. And we'll click on schedule. So what that means is it's not going to show up for my students until that time, okay? So that's very handy, so you can plan out a bunch of stuff ahead of time and just have it open when you actually need it to open for students to go and do. Okay. If you made a mistake or if you need to change anything with your assignment, if you give a click on top of it, when you're in the Classwork tab, we can go down to Edit Assignment, and we get the same page back that we can change it. All right. If I change my mind and if I want to have this be opened for everybody here, I can close out of that little X up there and choose Assign. That means it's going to be available for everybody to see immediately. And I'll say OK. And so now any students that I have in the class are going to be able to see that assignment now. They're going to see worksheet 1. Okay, so that was the process for creating an assignment. Let me see, we have another question. If you already posted something, can you change it to be saved as a draft? You absolutely can. Just like before, if we need to go back and edit the assignment, we can click on it once we're in the Classwork tab. We'll have to go up to the 3 dots if you post it, because if you click on View Assignments, it's going to take you into this view, which is a little bit different. We'll come back to this in a little bit. But when we're in the Classwork tab, we can click on the 3 dots in the top right corner of that assignment and click Edit. And if I want to, excuse me, if I want to change that out, let me see. Let's see, if we click on delete, grades and comments will also be deleted. Okay. Oh, no, you can't. That's a good question. All right, I thought you could. So it turns out, no. If you need to take it off, pretty much the only option you have right now is to delete the assignment so your students can't see it anymore. All right. So if you're ready to, if you click Assign, you have to really mean it. Good question, though. All right, let me create a. Oh, actually, you know, this is a good time since I deleted that. Let me show you another cool thing you can do under the Create tab here. I'll do a reuse post. And like I mentioned before, we're able to come in here and go grab any assignment from any of our other classes. So here's all my other classrooms that I've had. So obviously I have a bunch. And so here, I'll grab this worksheet assignment here. Sure, and click on reuse. And here we go. So it just drops in the new version for me. And here we go, 325 worksheet. There's all our assignments. Sounds good. Make a copy for each student. Okay, and then assign. And once this posts for me, there we go. So now we're ready for our students to go and do the assignment. So let me switch over to the student side of things. So here we are on the students perspective. So we'll notice in the stream tab, we get a notification here saying, here's the new assignment, 325 worksheet. So they can click right on that and go jump right into the worksheet, or they can go into the Classwork tab and they'll also see it in here as well. So either way, they can jump in and look at the assignment. If I am a co-teacher, may I reuse the assignments that the main teacher posted with his or her permission? Of course. I believe so, yes. I believe it's going to be the same options. If you are, I believe it's if you are a co-teacher in those other classrooms as well. If you are, that's a good question. You'll have to test that. That's a good question. I believe it's only if you are a co-teacher in those other classes too. I think that's kind of the caveat there. All right, so here we are from the student's perspective. And here is their attachments over here. So here's a PDF for them to read. And then over here we have the Your Work section. So we know this is the assignment that the students are supposed to do. So he clicks on his worksheet. And you can tell it's just a bunch of gobbledygook, but that's fine. And here's my answers, blah, blah, blah. Okay. And so once he's done, once my student here is done, we have a new button in here that only shows up in this situation where we can click turn in. Then we'll have the option, again, just confirming, and he'll click turn in. And just like that, we have our students' work now. All right, that's all the student has to do. Awesome. So yeah, if you are a co-teacher in those other classrooms, yeah, you can go and reuse those posts. Awesome. All right, so that's all the student has to do. The reason I say don't forget to press that submit button, this is where it's going to show up. Okay. So this just notifies the teacher that a student has turned something in. All right. Back on the teacher side of things, in the Classwork tab, when we click on our assignment here, it's going to show us how many students have been assigned and how many students have turned in this work. When we click on the turned in option here, it'll take us into this page and gives us a summary of all the assignments that have been turned in. Now, of course, you guys will probably have more students than just one here, but you'll start to see them all kind of fill in here. And somebody asked, can students can unsubmit and change? That's a good question. Yes, they can. So let me actually explain that real quick. So here I'm back on the student side again. Back on the student side, you'll notice there's an unsubmit button. If students click unsubmit, the teacher gets an email notification saying, hey, this student has unsubmitted their work. We still have their original that they originally turned in. If they unsubmit, make some changes, and then resubmit to you again, you get notified a second time when they resubmit. Okay, you can choose, it's your choice, if you just are only accepting the original one that they turned in, or if you're going to accept their resubmission. Okay, that's up to you. If they do give you a resubmission, you'll have the option of just ignoring the new one if you just want to stick with the old one. Students sent work to my email. Can I put it in, or do they have to go to Classroom? Where's it? So the if students send you things in email, you'll just basically have to record their score in here. I'll show you how to do that in just a little bit. And we'll talk about where you can find all of these assignments here. All right, so let me jump back to the student side. So in here, this is where all of the students' assignments are going to be kept. Okay, even after the due date comes and goes. Oops, even after the due date comes and goes. Oops. This page here. Let me jump back out here. Even after the due date comes and goes, so this was set to be due tomorrow or whatever it was, and we can still come into view assignment months and months later, it doesn't matter, and we can come to this page. This page will show all of our students' work, okay? And you'll notice over here on the left-hand side, we can manually put in students' scores, okay? So if you have that situation where you have where a student mistakenly emailed you their assignment instead of putting it in through Google Classroom, whatever, you can come in and manually put in their score. So if I manually say, okay, he got 90 out of 100, on this one, there it is. Okay, so it's there for them to still see. Okay, now if I want to actually look here and take a look at our students' work, we can click right on top of this little thumbnail that we have of the students' work here. It's going to take us into the grading view here. All right. This is where you're really going to do your grading, all right? So when you're actually looking through students' work, this is the way to do it, okay? Let me see another chat. The reason it was a draft is because I did not return it yet. So we'll have the option of returning. Notice up here in the top, we have return. So if I had more students in here, I could be plugging in all of their scores and then hit return at the end, and it gives the scores back to everybody. Let's see, when I created a Google Doc assignment, I gave it a title, but on the assignment list, it says it still says unnamed. I ran into that too. Once you finish out the assignment, give it a refresh and see if it continues to call it untitled. That's a good question. That might just be a bug or something they don't have worked out yet. Okay, so here is our grading view here. So when we come in here, we're seeing the student's version. And so here's, how I typed a little bit ago, here's the student's answers. If I want to leave him some feedback, I can highlight whatever I want. So just click and drag and highlight, or double click on top of a word to highlight it. And we'll see this little comment bubble over here on the right-hand side. And we can put in our comments here. Good point, something like that. Okay. Now, if you, let me see, I have another question here. No, I don't. Okay, never mind. If you find yourself typing the same thing over and over again, a cool thing that we have in our grading here is we have something called a comment bank. And so what we have to do to get to it is this little thin strip here. We'll see the second button down that looks like a little text message bubble. We can add things to our comment bank. So if we're typing the same comments over and over and over again, it makes it a lot easier, so we don't have to type the same thing, the same like long explanation over and over. So if we're talking about Newton's laws, first law means blah 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 blah. We can type in that whole thing only once, add it to the comment bank over here, and then we have it. So we don't have to type it over and over and over again to our students. All right. If I want to use that comment, same thing we just did before. We highlighted a certain word or a phrase, click on the little comment bubble, and what we do to use one of these is we type the pound symbol or the hashtag button, and we type the first letter or two, and we'll see that pop up there. And again, this is really nice if you have a big long paragraph of feedback there. That can save you a lot of time. All right, let me see our chat again here. For our question of how to put our stuff from your thumb drive into your Google Docs, we'll have to cover that later. I'll show that in a little while here. All right, for that longer question from LF, let's wait until we get to the question section, and then we'll kind of dive into those questions here. That's kind of a specific one. All right, so that is how you can leave some feedback for your students. So let's take a look at how we can actually leave a grade then. So back on this little thin strip here, we click on that first box that has like a little bunch of lines and a check mark. This is where we can start leaving our point values here. Okay, so if I'm looking at this assignment and I say, okay, that looks pretty good, never mind, he gets 100 out of 100, good job. We can leave that score. Okay, the three dots next to it is where you can change your total points. So if you made a mistake, if you forgot to change the total point value, you can change the total points. So it's like, oh, that's supposed to be 10, not 100. And you can change it back to whatever value you want. And there we go. So now it's worth 10 points. If you created an assignment that had a rubric with it, it's going to show up right here below your grades. Okay, and like I mentioned before, it's going to overwrite basically whatever you put in the grade section. Okay, now to demonstrate that, let me jump out here and create a new assignment real quick. Actually, you know, I think I have one from my old class. Let me see. I go to this one. I think it is. There we go. So this assignment here has a rubric with it. So like I just mentioned, it's going to show up right below the grade section. And here's our rubric, and we can even expand it here to take a look. So here are our point values, so bad, okay, and good. Whichever one I click on, all I have to do is just click on that value. It's going to automatically update the values up here, and it's going to update the total grade. Okay, so even if these point values are changed, notice it changes all of these different values, okay? And it does it basically by a percentage. So when I said it overwrites it, take a look at this. Even if you have your rubric point value as different from your total grade, notice how it changes. So if I change this to 2 points out of 3, it changes it to 6.67 out of 10. Okay, so it kind of does a proportional change there. Okay, so if you're using a rubric, all you have to do is click on the section that applies. Okay. All right. So once you have your grades all plugged in, below that we have our private comments. So if you want to leave them just kind of like an overall comment for the assignment here, so you can say, you know, overall, good job. Just remember the differences between whatever, okay? If I click post below that, all that does is post that comment to the students, to that student, okay? It does not return the work to them. They're not gonna see their final score yet. The way for them to see their final score is to come up to the top right up here and click on return, okay? This is what gives this is essentially giving the paper back to your student. Then clicking return, that's going to give it back to the student. When they come back, and here's back on the student side of things, let me give it a refresh here. Refresh. Right. They're going to see their point value here. So here they got a 10 out of 10, which I gave them. Here's that comment that I left for them. So now they're able to see that feedback and able to see their point value. If they go into the work page here, they're going to see my comments, those specific comments that I left. So here are those comments over here on the left hand, or I'm sorry, on the right hand side, that are pointing to some specific parts. Okay, so all that feedback can be left for them. We have another chat. Let's see. Let's see. If I'm creating one Google Classroom for 4 different content areas, but 6 different teachers, is going to Classwork the easiest way to post an activity assignment per teacher or subject area? I am confused by that question. If I'm creating one Google Classroom for 4 different content areas, but 6 different teachers, are you creating the classrooms for the teachers? Is Classwork the easiest way to post an activity assignment per teacher or subject area? Yes, the Classwork tab is the only way to post assignments or activities. That's the only way to post things for students. So yes. Okay. All right. Let me check. Somebody asked another question. If I send the work back to the student, do I still have a copy of it? Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Everything, like I mentioned, is going to be stored on this page here. Okay. Let me go back to our class here. If you need to go back and look at students' work later on, come up to the Classwork tab, find the appropriate assignment, and click on View Assignment. Here's where we're going to see all of the students. In this case, I only have one student in this class. You're going to see them lined up down here along the left-hand side, and you're going to see all of their assignments here in the middle of the page. Okay, you click on one of them, whichever one you want to look at, and you can look at this stuff again for later reference. Okay, nothing is deleted, nothing disappears unless you delete it. If I send the work back to the student, do I still have a copy? Okay, cool. All right. So that was the whole process of, let me back up here. That was the whole process of creating an assignment, attaching in whatever handouts and worksheets that you need to attach to put in there, setting your point values, setting your due dates, and then that's how you send it to students, post it for students so they can go see it. We saw how things look from the student perspective, how they go into the assignment, how they complete it, and how they turn it into you. Then we looked at how we grade it, how we give feedback, and how we leave points. All right, and then what students can do after you return it back to them. Okay. On the other point of resubmitting work, even after a student gets their work back again, they can do that resubmit again. Again, like I mentioned, as the teacher, it's up to you. If you want to just simply ignore it, you can. Again, you're going to get an email notification saying, hey, Timmy Smith sent you, resubmitted this worksheet. And you can go into your Google Classroom again, same exact location, and you can see the new version there. Okay. You can just ignore it. Or you can just have him just keep the original version. All right. So, another in the chat here. Once you make that rubric, can you use it over and over? Yes, you can. So you may have peaked. That's a really good question. If you are using the same rubric over and over again, let me create a new assignment here. If you want to, here's worksheet 2. Okay. And if you want to create an assignment, let me just throw something together real quick here. That's a bad example. There we go. If you want to reuse a rubric, under that rubric button, we have reuse. And we can go and grab a rubric from any other class. So I think I had that one. Here we go. So I have this reading and this, whatever this criteria was here. I can even preview it and see, okay, so here's what's in the rubric. Looks good. And I can go ahead and reuse that one in our assignment here. All right, so you don't have to keep making the rubric over and over again. As long as you're using the same rubric, you can just keep reusing it. Okay. If you need to make small adjustments, you can come in here and change it if you need to. Okay. Then you come into edit. If you need to make some changes, you can. Good question. All right. I'll just ditch this one here. Okay. So back over here, that was our Classwork tab. So like I said, a lot of the time that you'll be in Google Classroom is going to be in the Classwork tab. That's why we spent a good chunk of time in there. All right, so let's go into our People tab. And you'll notice that's the third tab across the top in our Google Classroom. And this one's pretty simple. When we first come into the People tab, this is where we'll see our teachers and or co-teachers. If you are the teacher that created the class, you're able to add co-teachers. Again, this is really good if you have a teacher team, or if you have a SPED teacher that you work with, whatever it is. You can come up here and click on the little person plus icon and just type in their email. Teachers, any co-teachers that you add can do everything that you can. The only thing they can't do is delete the class. So if you want help for making assignments, for grading assignments, for checking on the students, student discussion boards, whatever, that's a really good thing to have. Below that, we have all of our students. If we click on the little person plus icon next to them, this is where we can direct add students. This is good since everybody's doing remote learning here. This is going to be really good for your younger kids who might have trouble using that join code like we saw earlier. So if we just need to directly add them in, this is the way to do it. Okay, if you have a list of student emails, you can just copy that whole list of student emails and paste the whole thing in here. Okay, so if I put in, or you can just type them one at a time. Brady Brown and org. So here's another student, and we type them in one by one. Okay, obviously it's a kind of a pain in the butt if you have a lot of students. So if you're able to pull like an email list of your students, whether it's from somewhere in Progress Book, or if ask an administrator if you can get that in some way or another, that'll be an easier way to do it. Okay, that's particularly good for your younger students. For your for like upper elementary and beyond students, you can just give them the join code. They should be okay with getting in from there. All right, I'll go ahead and invite Betty here. She's another one of our fake student accounts here. And when they're invited here, they're going to show up kind of grayed out here because they're not in the class yet, but they've been invited. Now, a couple other things that we can do to manage our students here. If I need to change how Andrew is behaving in the class, if I give a little check mark next to his name there, and then below this actions button here, I can email him directly, I can remove him, or I can mute him. As much as I probably want to do that in real life sometimes, we can actually mute them inside Google Classroom here, where they can still submit their work, but other students aren't going to be able to see it. He cannot reply to classmates' work, and he can't comment or post in the stream. All right, so if the stream is overall being used by everybody appropriately, except for a couple of kids like Andrew here, you can mute him and he won't be able to use it. Okay, and then that brings me over into the settings gear. If we come up to the settings gear way up in the top right corner, this is where we'll see our class settings. If we want to rename the class, we can do that. And if we keep scrolling down under the general section, this is another place where we can find our join code. This is also where you can disable your join code or reset it. Disabling means you basically turn off the join code. So even if a student has the join code, they won't be able to join in. So if you're just done accepting students, you can just disable it. Resetting it means you'll get a new join code. So if for some reason a student shared out the join code with his friends and all his friends were just randomly joining your class, you can reset it. And then more importantly here is the stream. This is where you can have some settings for your stream page, where you can set what students are able to do in the stream. So like I mentioned, the stream can be good for announcements or as like a discussion board, and this is where you can configure that. So if you want, you can have it where students can post and comment, so they have full reign, basically. Or you can do students can only comment, meaning only you can create a topic or a post, and students can just comment on that. Or you can make it so only the teacher can post or comment. Students really can't do anything except for look at whatever you have on the stream. You'll also have the option of having classwork posted on the stream. So this one's, again, just a personal preference organization, I guess, choice. So you can have it where on the stream tab, it will show the classwork that is posted on there, or you can hide it, or you can show like a full version or kind of a condensed version. So it's up to you. It's just for organization's sake. You can also choose to whether or not you're going to see the deleted items. So if you deleted some assignments, you can have them show up there if you want to see them. All right, and then that brings us over into the Guardian summaries. So let me explain what those do. So Guardian summaries are automatically generated emails that are sent out to parents. And this is what they look like here. And so what they do, again, these are just automatically created, and students, or I'm sorry, parents can choose to receive them. I believe it's weekly or bi-weekly, and they essentially show any missing work, any stuff that's coming up in the next week, any activity that they've turned in over the past week for each of their classes. Okay, and parents again have the option of subscribing or unsubscribing from these automatic emails. All right. The way to ensure that parents are getting these emails is to see a parent's name or email right here. Okay. When we, let me back up here. When we have a student that doesn't have a guardian here, let me remove the guardian here. There we go. If a student has this button here that says invite guardians, you can just type in or paste the parent's email if you have it. If you don't, there's nothing that's essential that it's going to break anything if you don't have it. But if you have students, if you have parents' emails and they want to be in the loop more, this is where you can put in that parent's email. All right, and parents can opt out if they don't want to receive those Guardian summaries. Okay. Next thing, in our last tab at the top here is our grades, and this is our grade book. So we're able to see all of our students' work here. Of course, as students come into the class, we'll see more students kind of line up across the left-hand side here, and then we'll see more assignments as we start to do them. As we start to post assignments, are going to be posted along the top. All right. And this will just be kind of filled out. This is another place where you can come in here and manually edit a student's assignment here. If I change that, and if I change it to 9 points instead of 10, again, notice it did save it as a draft. I need to make sure to return it to the student, noting the grade change there. Okay, so if you need to make any of those little quick adjustments, this is a good place to do it as well. Okay, and we have another chat. Let's see. The students won't show up until they accept the invitation. Yes, correct. So and since you brought that up, that's a good point here. Let me show you what it looks like for students that have been invited to the class by the teacher but haven't accepted yet. So when a student comes in, let me say that again. When you add a student manually to your Google Classroom, they'll come into Google Classroom just like you. So again, this is a student view. And once they come in here, they're going to see this class, and now they'll have this option of joining into the class. And once they click on join, now they're in. All right, they're in the class now, and just like the other student, he's in here, she's in here, ready to go. What if a student turned in his assignment via Class Dojo, and I want to change in Google Classroom? That's a minute how to do that. You'd probably just have to have them, easiest thing to do in that case, come into the grades tab, find that student and manually put in the grade. So like for this kid, like Betty, she's a brand new student. I haven't received this 325 worksheet. Let's pretend that this worksheet was turned in some other outside program. I can put in her score in here. Maybe she got an 8 on it. That's good. Return. And now I have their score. Okay. So even though notice also it's going to mark it as not turned in, you can also leave like a little message for yourself if you like. So another question, do you recommend individual classes for each teacher or one grade level class with co-teachers? I would recommend one class per teacher. That would probably be the easiest thing to do. What if it's an ungraded assignment? If it's ungraded, then it particularly doesn't matter. Then you just have to make it ungraded and just basically confirm that it was turned in, I suppose. Okay. Can students rename themselves? No, students cannot. The name that they get here is whatever name that is associated with their G Suite account, with their Google account. So no, whatever they are named as when they have an email, a school email created, is the name that will pop up. Good question. Okay. One thing I forgot was the home page. We saw this earlier. Again, to get to the home page, let me close the wrong one. There we go. To get to the home page, we just come up to the little hamburger menu way up in the top left corner, give it a click, and then the very first button that has a little house that says classes. This is our home page. Again, this is just where all of your classrooms live. That's where you can manage all of them too. Somebody asked a question, integrate grades into progress book. Can I record a video with instruction and then add it to an assignment? For your first question, for integrating grades into progress book, that's something we'll show in just a little bit. And then for your second question, can I record a video with instruction and then add it into an assignment? You absolutely can. So if you are creating like a Screencastify video, let me show you how you would do that. So if you're using Screencastify, which I wholeheartedly recommend for instructional videos, Screencastify specifically will save the videos that you make into your Google Drive. So you just have to go and grab them when you're creating an assignment. So we'll go to Add and then Google Drive. And then we go into My Drive. And just like how Google Classroom automatically creates a folder for you, Screencastify automatically creates a Google Drive folder. Here's my Screencastify folder. Here's a video. There it is. And then I post it for my students to see. I can even have them make a copy for each student if I need to. Okay. So if you make an instructional video with a screen recorder app like Screencastify, you can post it right along with that assignment. And that actually, and I recommend if you're doing some remote learning this way, if you know, doing the live classrooms like through Zoom or Google Meet or whatever is a little cumbersome, or students aren't coming in on time, or it's become more of a pain in the butt than it's worth, pre-recording your lectures or note sections or whatever, your explanations, whatever it is, in Screencastify, and then posting them here in Google Classroom along with like a worksheet is a really, really good way to go. Good question. Sorry, can you repeat how to get the general section to update Guardian settings? So to get into settings, we come up to the settings gear up in the top right. If you want to turn on Guardian summaries, just make sure this is flipped on. First, for parents to be able to receive those Guardian summaries, they have to show up here. If it just says invite Guardians, you're gonna have to put in their email. You have to find their email and put it in here. Cool. All right. Whew. All right. So back on the slideshow here. Again, the slideshow has a lot of step-by-step stuff. This is why I give you guys the slideshow so you can refer back to it later. I'm throwing a lot of info at you, so I don't want to overwhelm you guys too much. But again, on the slideshow here, there's more step-by-step stuff. Here's another backup video for how you can assign work, the differences between the different types of assignments. Now, if you are looking for a couple of good ways to kind of organize your classwork page, over time, you're going to start having a lot of assignments in there probably. So a good thing to do is to organize it with topics, and you can even do emojis too, which is kind of cool. Let me check my chat again. Can you go over how to add an already prepared worksheet, and can it be made interactive for the student, like a math worksheet? Yeah, so here, I'll jump back into that real quick. So if you have a worksheet that's already created, here's the whole process. We go into the Classwork tab, go into Create, and then an assignment. We'll come under the Add button. As long as, I recommend to store all of your work in Google Drive, and then grab the assignment, whatever it is. So like if this, where is it here? This worksheet is already made, and we'll just add it right in. And we want each student to have their own version. Make sure to change it to make a copy for each student under that section. All right, that means students are going to be able to edit it on the page, and they can make whatever changes that they want. So again, if you have some spots open for them, again, that's why I recommend have a real clear spot for them to respond. Okay, and then from there, they can answer it and they'll turn it in just like we saw. Okay. All right. Another chat. Cool. All right. So, like I mentioned, your classwork page might fill up real quick with a lot of stuff. So we can organize it in a couple of different ways. One is with topics, and two is you can even use emojis, which is kind of a fun thing to do. Oh, let me check my chat again. Is there an easy way to move docs over from Google Drive under a different email address? What if I have Word docs? How can I add them to Google Docs? All right. For the Google Drive questions, we'll cover that at the end. Basically, you just upload them into your Google Drive. Is there an easy way to move docs over from a Google Drive under a different email address? Yes, share them. That's probably easiest way to do it, or download them and then upload them to the correct account. Okay. For that question, that's the second time I had that question on how to upload things into Google Drive. We'll cover that at the end here. Okay. So if we want to organize our classwork page, so as you can imagine, we can have a lot of stuff in this in the Classwork tab that can fill up really, really quick. So we can organize things into different topics or sections. Somebody had a question, is it possible to use a video instead of a picture for your Google Class theme? Yes, it has to be a GIF though. It has to be a GIF file. All right, so if we want to organize our classwork page into different topics, we go into the Create button and do Topic at the bottom. And now there's different ways that you can use the topic. You may use it for like different types of assignments, or maybe you'll organize it by different days or different subjects, or maybe you'll organize it by like different chapters. Whichever one you want to use, however you want to organize your class, of course, it's up to you. For our purposes, maybe I'll make different topics based on like different types of assignments. So I'll make one that's like bell work. Then I'll make another one. So create topic, maybe one's classwork. And then one more, we'll do homework. Okay. And the cool thing is we can drag and organize these things wherever we want. So if I want them to be, a little more organized here, I can maybe have it go bell work, classwork, homework. That makes sense to my brain. And now I can drag any of these assignments that I already created here under whichever section I want. So if I want to drag this one under, maybe that one's classwork, and then this one is homework. Okay, so that's just one way to organize things. Of course, you can make it in different ways. As a total side note, if you want to throw in an emoji, we can rename these topics, and this will also work for the names of assignments as well. But if you want to do that, if you're on a Windows computer, you can do hold down the Windows key and press semicolon. It opens up this the emoji keyboard here, and you can just basically put in whichever emoji that you want. And you can kind of use like these emojis to kind of like as like little targets or reminders of where you're at, something like that. So I think it's especially good if you are organizing your topics maybe by like chapter. So if you have like chapter 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you have the little smiley face guy or star or whatever it is, you can have that one on the chapter that you guys are currently on. So just kind of one idea. Little side note. It's on the slideshow here on slide number 14 for how to get the emoji keyboard on PC and Mac and a Chromebook. All right. So that brings us to a little bit of a break time here. So let's take about 10 minutes here. Stretch your legs, look away from the computer for a second, stretch your eyes, if you can stretch your eyes. And let's come back at 2 o'clock. In the meantime, if you want to stretch your legs, go grab a coffee or whatever. If you have any questions, feel free to fire away. Let's take a break until 2 o'clock. We're nearing the end, by the way. So if you have any questions, feel free to fire away. We'll come back at 2 o'clock here and play around with some of the stuff that we talked about so far. So kind of poke around at how to create an assignment, poke around in adding students, adding a co-teacher, setting up topics, all that fun stuff. All right, so let's come back at 2 o'clock. All right, for our first question, let's see. I'm trying to use this for all students with occupational therapy in school. Is there a privacy setting that keeps students from seeing each other's work communication in one classroom, or do I need to make a classroom for each student? Yes. So for the question from Jen, what you'll need to do is under the Settings tab, or I'm sorry, under the People tab rather. Under the People tab, we'll select all of our students here, little check mark, and make sure they're all selected, and we'll mute everybody. Okay, so they can still submit their work, but they can't basically see each other's stuff. As long as everybody's muted, then basically everybody, no one will be able to see each other's work. You don't have to make a separate classroom for each student. All right, for LF, your question, our school counselor here, when you create an assignment and set it to be ungraded, it's effectively the exact same thing as creating a material. It's the same thing. So it really doesn't matter on that point. Students would be able to turn something in if it's a material. That's the only difference. So if you want to have something, students return something to you to like keep track of, doing an ungraded assignment is the best way to go. Okay, from Christy, how do we make this a resource for kindergarten students, beginning readers and writers? So first thing I would do is under the People tab, choose the little person plus icon and add all your students in manually. Again, all you need is their email. So if you grab it from your SIS or progress book or whatever it is, either type in or paste in all of their emails. So you just add them yourself manually, because probably if you were in person with them, you could get them to use the join code. But since it's remotely, it's going to be probably too difficult to do. And the other thing I'd recommend is when you're creating assignments, I would probably use emojis because these are pre-readers, so it's probably a little easier for them to identify the smiley face or the star or the hat or whatever it is. That might be a couple of good ways to get some kids in. All right, let's see. A different Christy asked, does this only work with Gmail accounts? Short answer is yes. Long answer is kind of. These are so Google Classroom is a G Suite service. So you have to have G Suite for Education accounts to be able to do this. So yes, Google does have a standalone program. I think it's called Google Assignments, I believe. Yeah, Google Assignments has this is a it's an even simpler version of Google Classroom. Basically, it's only the assignments ability with basically nothing else. I don't believe you have to have a G Suite account to use it. I don't believe so. So if you're not a Google school, if you don't have G Suite, I believe Google Assignments might work for you. If you're looking for another LMS, like if you're a Microsoft school, Microsoft Teams is actually pretty good too. So that might be a better option. All right, from Lisa, do I have access to see their documents they type, or do I have to have them share with me? I just have them share, but I get so many emails. Yeah, so the whole point of Google Classroom is to have the ability for students to for you to be able to distribute work to students and to collect things back from students without having to get a billion emails, without filling up and confusing your Google Drive. Okay, Google Classroom is a learning management system, and that's the whole point. Now, if you want to see their documents, just like the whole process I showed for creating an assignment, posting it for students to see, students going and completing it, and then them turning it in and you grading it, all that stuff is within Classroom, and that's kind of the whole point. You're not going to get emails for each one of those events. All right, pretty much the only time you're getting emails, I can actually show you that. Pretty much the only time you're going to get emails is under these circumstances here, is if you have a comment on your classroom or on your stream posts, and you can configure all this stuff. This is under the settings gear, the settings button when you're in the hamburger menu way at the bottom. So if you want to change what you get emailed for, as a side note here, you can change all this stuff. Okay. Normally though, when students turn work in, you're not going to get notified. It's just going to all show up in your classwork tab, and you'll be able to grade from there, and you'll see all the work, all the papers that they do. All right, from Beth, I have young students that have never used this site and neither have parents. Is there some kind of simple resource that explains how to use this? I dropped something. I don't know what I just dropped. Have parents? Yes. So I believe that is on this page here. Hang on. Here we go. I believe it's on slide number, the link on slide number 6. I believe will show you some of the basics from the parents' side. I could be wrong. That's a good question. I'll have to see if there is a good parent resource. Essentially, what parents get is just those email summaries. Parents won't have an account to log into unless the school gives them an account, which I doubt, most schools don't do. Let's see, I lost my spot. My understanding is that we have to enter the Google email the parents have been given to add them to the Google Classroom email. Yeah, so you will have to, your Google Classrooms will only accept your school's accounts. Somebody who does not have a school given email address won't be able to join into the class. Okay, so somebody that just has their own personal Gmail account won't be able to get in. Okay, under certain circumstances, if your Google administrator has enabled that function, which most don't, anybody that's not part of the school or doesn't have a school email address won't be able to get in. Yeah, each for SP_H Meeker. Yes, if again, like I said, it has to be a school given email address. Let's see, from Debbie, my team teacher made our original classroom and she added the students by email. Is there a way for me to see which students were invited that have not joined yet so that I can check their email addresses have been used? I believe a couple, yes. The way to make sure, let me go into one of my classrooms here. The way to see if a student has been invited but not accepted yet, the name when you're in the People tab will be grayed out. All right. So if I come in here and I'll add another student real quick. So I have another fake student. Oops. So I have another fake student here, and I'll put him in manually. Notice how it's grayed out. It says invited. That means students have been invited, but they have not joined the class yet. I'm not sure what Lisa, what your question's referring to, what the share button is for. Do you have any ideas for how to use Seesaw with Google Classroom? So Seesaw, what Seesaw does is it's really good for giving you more options for the types of assignments students can do. You can integrate the two, Seesaw with Google Classroom. And again, Seesaw is really good for doing more complex activities, I guess. Like in Google Classroom, the types of assignments that you can give them are really based around the Google world, whether you just give them a Google Doc or you give them a Google slide, and they work on that. Okay. I just made a Screencastify account. Cool, awesome. Screencastify for Betty, your question. Screencastify is a Google Chrome extension. It's a standalone thing. If you just do a Google search for Screencastify, it'll take you through the directions for how to install it. It's a Google Chrome extension. And then lastly from Lisa here, when they are typing in a document, they can hit the share button at the top right if it's blue, then type in my email and it comes to my email. Yes, so the option's still gonna be there. What you kind of have to do is teach your students we're not doing sharing anymore, we're doing turn in, okay? Because we're gonna be using Google Classroom now. Okay, that's the difference. That share button's still gonna be there. It just comes down to you kind of saying, okay, we're not doing the share anymore. You're just turning it in Google Classroom. You'll hit that turn in button, not the share button. I'm not the teacher of record, but share students with a teacher. If I want to keep track of grades for my records, I'll go to her progress book. For Robin Bishop, your question there, if you put it into progress book. Could you repeat how to use emoji? That is on slide number, let me see. Slide number 14 has the directions there for using emojis. All right. All right. So let's go ahead and we'll kind of come into our final home stretch here. On slide 16 through, let's see, 16 through 22. That basically is just screenshots and step-by-step for how of how grading works. We already kind of went through that today. So there's just, again, more reference for you guys to refer back to. Real quick about using the mobile version of Google Classroom. So whether you're on an iPhone or an iPad, or if you have an Android phone, you're able to basically do all of your posting and assigning and grading from your mobile device as well, which is pretty cool. So if you're just sitting on the couch binging Netflix during these dark days, you're able to do some grading in here as well. So if you use the Google Classroom mobile app, you'll sign in the same exact way, and then you'll be able to go in and post and grade assignments just like before. We have another question here. What do you recommend for students who don't have a school email, or work with pre-K students who go through the ESC? If they don't have an email, that makes it a lot trickier. I would look into Google Assignments. Google Assignments, I'll pull that up again real quick. If you just do a Google search for Google Assignments, this will give you a couple more options that might be a little bit of a better fit if you don't have school accounts. Or you can talk with your Google administrator to open the ability for non-school emails to join Google Classroom, but it's a little funky how that works. Okay. But there we go. And so again, back to the mobile version here. There's a lot of cool stuff in the mobile version. There's also this pick a student feature, which I wish was in the desktop laptop version, but it's not. But you can have the ability to randomly pick a student, so it's kind of like the old popsicle stick thing. It's kind of nifty. But I just want to go into that real quick, just to let you know it's out there. It's something that's available for you guys, where you can basically do all the same stuff on your phone or tablet, which is cool. Anyway, so in one thing I mentioned earlier was the ability to combine Google Classroom and Progress Book. If you are doing a lot of assignments in Google Classroom and you need to take those grades and go and put them into your Progress Book grade book, you can do that. Now, I have nothing but dummy fake accounts, so this isn't going to work terribly well. But here on slide number 26 here is a link to a YouTube video that shows you how to do it as well. I'll run through the process real quick for you guys as well. Now, this is something that your school has to have enabled. Some of your schools may have it, some might not. I'm not sure which schools have this option enabled or not. But here's how this works. When you're in your Progress Book grade book, you pick whichever class that you need. And then about halfway down the middle part of the page, we find this button called Google Classroom Sync. And then in here, we'll choose an assignment type. I created an assignment type for Google Classroom, or you can have it one of your regular assignment types if you're familiar with your grade book here. You can choose whichever one you want. In the middle part of the page here, we'll select whichever classroom we're pulling assignments from. So here's my March 25th demo class. Oh, here's this assignment that we just made. Now click on next. And basically what it's doing is it's pulling in all of the assignments that have been created before, or that have been created in Google Classroom and their grades, and it's putting them as the marks values here in Google Classroom. I'm sorry, in Progress Book Gradebook here. Now, all of the students that I have here on my screen are all just dummy fake students that I don't have in my Google Classroom. That's why they're all coming up with these little notifications here. But that's essentially what it is. In here, if you have matching students here, you would see the new gradebook grade and the original grade from Google Classroom. Then you click sync. All right. Then you just see a summary of all that stuff here. And so here's that worksheet. It's already in. So if I come back out here and I come into that classroom I was in, notice under the assignment section over here on the right-hand side, we see, oh, here's this Google Classroom icon, and we see that worksheet. Okay, and so it's great because you're going to see all those grades that have come in. Again, all these students that I have here right now are just fake accounts that I don't have in the original. But since you guys will have real students here, you're going to have obviously real students, and you're going to have all these numbers are going to be filled in already with whatever points they got on the Google Classroom assignment originally. Somebody asked a question, will Google Sync to Progress Book auto update grades, or would I need to update every time I want to add a new graded assignment? So yes, you do need to do this every time. It's not going to automatically do it for you. So every time you're ready to sync, you'll have to come into the classroom, do the Google Sync, and you can select multiple ones. So maybe just do this like every Friday or something. So you just come in, choose the class, and you can select multiple assignments as well. So we'll come in here and it loads for me. There we go. So I can post, okay, it's this one, oops, this one, and this one. Next, I'll post for building out all this stuff in here. It's loading for me. There we go. And so it brings in each of those assignments. Yes, you do have to do it every time. It's not going to do it automatically for you, but you can just, again, do it like at the end of the week, and then you can just collect everything that you did that week. Good question. We had another one. What was the other question? Let's see. So you can sync it without grades entered yet. Yeah, you can. You can sync it without the grades entered yet. I'm assuming you're talking about in Google Classroom. What I would recommend is the whole process: create an assignment, post it for your students. Students do the assignment, you grade it, you return it back to them. Then probably at the end of the week, you can just go into your progress book and then sync all the grades for the week. That's all you have to do. Okay, that way you don't have to do it every time. Every time you get stuff turned in, but you can just keep syncing with Google Classroom. Peggy asked about CEUs. Yes, we'll have a CEU certificate at the end of today. Don't worry about it. I will send that out to everybody once we finish out today. All right. And let's jump back in here again. So last few little tips here before we kind of wrap it up. So 4 ways to streamline your Google Classroom. One is, I like the idea of using emojis. You can use them to easily track where students are supposed to be. Again, really good for your really younger students. So if you teach like kindergarten, first, second grade, for early readers here, that can be a good way for students to visualize where they're supposed to go. All right. Another good idea is to delete your old topics and move posts around to a last grading period topic. Just create a new topic called last grading period, and you post and you throw in all the old stuff in there. You can keep the stream really clean and just keep it reserved for discussions. So hide any classwork in the from showing up on the stream, and then for control who can post onto the stream. So if it's becoming an issue where students are kind of abusing the stream, you can control that. And we have another chat here. Is there a way to keep assignments from showing up in the stream so it's not as cluttered? Yep. Hey, I'm a psychic. All right. Here on slide 28 is the step-by-step for the rubrics. So if you need a little help with setting up your rubrics, on 28 is a page there for you. On slide 29 is another video for how you can create quote-unquote cheat-proof Google Forms. So if you're concerned about students going off and cheating on their Google Forms quizzes, there's a couple of tips there for you. Again, I'm not going to show that today, but it's there for your reference. All right, so we're at a pretty good time here. So now it's time for our post quiz. So again, go to joinmyquiz.com, and just like before, you'll put in a new join code. Let me launch this one again here. So we'll come to, oops, my quizzes. So you'll go to joinmyquiz.com, and you'll type in this new code 091087. And we'll have the same questions as we did at the beginning today. Joinmyquiz.com, and then the game code is 091087. Let's see. Yes, for your question about CEU's contact hours, I'll be sending out a certificate at the end of today. I'll give everybody another minute to jump into our quiz here. So again, it's joinmyquiz.com, and then you'll put in a join code that is 091087. All right, so I'll go ahead and launch it. And if you lost the join code, again, it's 091087, joinmyquiz.com. We're doing very good so far, sitting at 91% accuracy for the class. That's pretty awesome. And we got Chris and Robin on 7 correct answers in a row. Oh, and Jen B as well. Lots of people doing 7 in a row correct. Awesome. Lots of people got 100%. Very, very good. I'll try to finish up in the next couple seconds, and then we'll wrap it up for the day. All right, so let's take a look at our final scores here. Let's see who our big winner for the post quiz was here. I can earn all the bragging rights. Third place is Rena. Second place is Amy. And first place, Diana. So nice job. We got all the points. Nicely done. I'm sure you guys all got 100%. We got a lot. We did very, very good, actually. We had 93% class accuracy. Lots of people with 90 or 100%. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So the one thing I want to show real quick is, let me see if I can get out of here. There we go. The one thing I want to show real quick is I can look at these reports. This is another thing about quizzes that I really like, is I can look at the average for the class. So again, at the beginning we had 71% accuracy. We jumped up to 93, which is pretty awesome. And if we can even look at our commonly missed questions here. Most people, 90% got 93% got the first question right. Not very many problem questions here. Number 4, two ways can you access Google Classroom? It's classroom.google.com and the waffle. Let's see which other ones. 98% got that one. Awesome. Man, lots of people got most of them right, which is really awesome to see. Very cool. Anywho, let me check my chat again here. I'm going to use Google Classroom administratively. Please review with me how we can have people join without entering a code. Sure. So somebody asked, how can we have students add people in without a join code? If we need to add them in manually, we go into the class. To add people in manually, we go into people, and we find here next to students, we'll find the invite button here, the person plus icon, and we type in their emails. Okay, that's all we have to do. And then that person will get an email notification saying, hey, you've been added to the class. And they can just go to Google Classroom and they'll see the class there for them. Let's see. Sorry, Peggy, I didn't get to finish. I just wanted to finish up so I didn't keep you guys too late here. Another one from Debbie. Do you have another webinar about creating a Zoom meeting? I don't have a webinar. I do have a pre-recorded video. It's on our YouTube channel. Here's our YouTube channel. It's Neonet Tech Integration. Here is this video, how to use Zoom for online instruction. So there it is. I'll copy the link actually for you guys. Here, I'll put it in the chat. Oops, that's the wrong thing. I'll put a link in the chat here to everybody. There we go. So that YouTube link I just put in the chat will go to how to use Zoom for online instruction, that video. It's about 25 minutes long. So if you need some help with using Zoom, that's a good way to go. Let's see, from Amy, is there a Google app similar to Plickers where you can give quizzes like that without one-to-one devices? Nothing particularly in Google. Obviously, Google's very tech-heavy. Plickers is probably a really good way to go for non-one-to-one. One or more time, how do we hide assignments in the stream? Hiding assignments in the stream is, oops. We come up to the settings gear when we're in Classroom, and then under the general section, we have classwork on the stream, and we can choose whether or not to hide them or condense them. Okay, from Megan. All right, Megan, I'm going to answer your question in just a second because that's kind of the ones I just want to answer to the smaller group of people that need that info. So let me do my wrap up spiel, and then I can answer that question for you. Okay, so here's our to-do list that we started with at the beginning. So we looked at how to set up a classroom, add teachers and co-teachers and students, how to talk with parents, how to connect with your Google Drive and posting and grading assignments, and how Google Classroom works with Progress Book. So that brings us right down to the end. It's almost 2:30 on the dot, so that was pretty good timing. On slide number 32 here, there's a link for a survey if you're so inclined. You don't have to, but if you're so inclined. There's also a link here for more trainings here. When you click on more trainings from Neonet, oh, I need to fix that link, oops. If you go into the training menu or the calendar, this is my training website here. Here's all the upcoming trainings that are going to be happening. There's different categories there, or you can look in the calendar for all the upcoming trainings that I'll be having. Since we started all this remote online learning, what I've done is basically every afternoon between 2:30, between 2 and 3 o'clock, I have open help sessions. The way to find them is on this calendar page here. So training.neonet.org, and then you can go to the calendar section, and you can click on the calendar date. So if you want to come to, I'll be holding a open help session here in a couple of minutes. Here's the link to join that. So if you have any lasting questions or anything, these are things that you can jump into on the daily, and so there's the links for those to join. Okay. Other than that, that pretty much brings us down to the end. If you have any other questions, feel free to fire away. You can unmute yourself and ask away. If not, that pretty much brings us down to the end. I'll be sending out a CEU certificate of attendance here in just a little bit. So just keep tuned to your email for that. Okay. Other than that, if you have any other questions, ask away. If not, I'll see you guys next time. Thanks for coming. The question from Beth, how can I be sure the slideshow is in my Google Drive? It'll be in your shared with me folder in your Google Drive. So when you're in your Google Drive like this, under the shared with me section on the left-hand side, it should show up in there. If not, jot down the short link, bit.ly/C class 325. That'll keep it there too. That link will always go to this slideshow. All right, guys, thanks so much. If you're all set, you can find the leave meeting button, or you can just X out to leave the meeting. If you want to take the survey, it's on slide number 32. Here, I can put the link to it. Oops. I'll also put the link to the survey in the chat if you need it. All right. Now I had a couple of questions about how do we upload things into our Google Drive. So if I have something like on a flash drive or sitting on my desktop, how can I put that in my Google Drive? So all we have to do is when we are in our Google Drive, drive.google.com, we come up to the new button up in the top left, and we can upload a whole folder or upload, we can do file upload or folder upload. So if you have a whole folder full of things, you can click on folder. If you have just an individual file, you can choose file. All right. So if I have a whole folder in my flash drive, I can choose whatever I need and I can upload it. Okay. So if I have, I have too much junk in here. Let's see. I can pick whatever folder I want and it'll upload. And I can just upload all that stuff. Okay. Anything that you post in your, that you save into your Google Drive will be saved there. Okay, so Jim's question, I don't see the slideshow in your shared with me. You may not be signed in with your Google account. So for sake of ease here, I would just jot down the short link somewhere. So just jot this, make a note somewhere of this short link, bit.ly/C class 325. That link will always go to the slideshow. So you can refer back to it there. If you're not, as long as you're signed in into the browser with your Google account, it should show up in your shared with me folder. If it doesn't, just jot down the short link, the bit.ly link. I'll put it in the chat as well.
Can I have the short link again?
Yep, I just put it into the chat.
Oh, thank you. Oh, and that's
Mhm.
been there multiple times. I apologize.
Yeah, no problem.
You know, the other thing is, I actually signed up, you know, late last week, I think. I'm not sure. But I told a friend about it, a coworker, and she received an email back, and she sent me the email that you sent her. I didn't actually get the email invite directly from you. So am I officially in this class or not?
Let me check. Uh, this is Jim, right? Let me see if you're on my list here. Did you fill out a Google form signing up for this, or were you just given the link?
No, I'm the one who signed up and then told her about it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, basically whoever has signed up in the Google form, that's how I collect the emails to send you guys the certificates of attendance. Since we're in kind of a funky situation right now, I'll also send the certificate of attendance to your tech directors as well, tech directors and principals, letting them know, hey, if anybody came to my webinar and didn't get a certificate, they can just give you that. I'll send it to them as well.
But I'm pretty confident I don't see my name on this list.
Let's see.
I know that that I did sign up, and I received an email back that there I am.
Yeah, I have you. Yep.
Okay. All right. I appreciate it.
No problem. All right. All right. So, does anybody have any other questions here? We have about 15 people left in the chat here. Any other questions? I ran through how to upload things into your Google Drive, but if you have any other questions, now's the time to ask. All right. So if nobody has any other questions, I'll just close out the meeting now. Looks like any other questions, feel free to ask away. Now's the time. Let's see. Correct these things. View more training. Yeah, the link. I'm sorry, it goes to the wrong. The view more trainings link. Just go to the calendar or training menu tabs of that website. So it will be on shared drive, and if not accessible, then type in the bit.ly. Yes, yeah. If you don't see the slideshow in your shared with me folder, in your shared with me section, then just jot down the bit.ly short link. All right, last call for questions. Anything else? I'll boot you out if we don't have any more questions. I'll just assume that you're away from your computer. Any last minute questions here?